Well, Thanksgiving, and can you hear me now? I hope that you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving and you were able to celebrate with gratitude in your heart. And I heard recently that there is this beautiful relationship between gratitude and generosity, that it's not enough just to internalize a state of thankfulness and to say a mere prayer over a turkey meal, but the proper way of showing gratitude and thanksgiving is through generosity. The relationship between gratitude and generosity is that generosity is the fulfillment and it's the showing of a grateful heart. And so we are generous with our time, we are generous with our ears to be a listening friend, we are generous with our hands to help out, and we're generous with our finances to be able to give to those in great need. That is a relationship that is ongoing, a daily practice that creates a better world. So Advent, coming right after Thanksgiving, is perfect because Advent invites us to daily practices to change the world. And in light of this, I received what I thought was a book in the mail. And I went in and I grabbed the book, and my hand was right here, and it had the words, "Share the Advent." You can't see it, but it says, "Share the Advent." And I was kind of excited to see in my mailbox, maybe this is a word of God. I wonder what they have to say about Advent, because most people go straight to Christmas and toward, you better get your Christmas list up and ready. You buy for your grandkids, your children. You have the madness of decorating your house and all of that. And so I brought it in eager to find out what it said. And so I moved my hand, and it was actually Share the Adventure, not Advent, Adventure. And it was Amazon's Holiday Kids Gift Book. Over 600 toys and gifts. Legos. There's tons of Legos in here. So, Share the Adventure was the message I got, and sometimes preachers are notorious for taking away the cultural fun of Christmas. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say there's something in the culture, the way that we have fused our gift-giving, our feasting, our economy with the birth of Christ. I want us to go a little bit deeper into that and to say there's something that represents a deeper longing on behalf of, when we watch the commercials that unfortunately started in late September, I think, and they showed these families, and they're all so happy, and they're together, and they're wearing the same pajamas, and they're just so excited, and they're loving each other up, and they're rushing to the Christmas tree, and they're opening, and all of this wonderful colored plastic comes out of these boxes. And the kids are just smiling. And so there is something beyond the superficiality of that points to a deeper longing to find ourselves in community, to find ourselves located in family, that we are not alone, and we are not alone in the presence of celebration. Celebration, a forward-looking hope for something that not just sustains us and keeps us going, but brings meaning to our lives and purpose that can be truly found in how we relate to each other and our capacity for friendship and love. Today we reflect upon the prophets and who they were. And I keep thinking that, boy, if I ever had the chance to have a prophet come to my Thanksgiving feast, I would make sure that I had double-locked the doors. I would not want to sit for very long with one of these prophets. As wonderful as their poetry is, I would not want my culture or my nation to be dissected the way that the prophets took apart the nations of their day. Because the prophet did something that had not occurred in human history until they came on the scene. They took the spotlight off of nature as being the cosmic center of everything, where the gods are all representing things like fertility and representing harvest and representing the capacity to defend ourselves from another tribe who wants our resources. And the prophets talked about a bigger God, and a God who wasn't confined to the seasons of nature's cycles. The realm of the prophet was history. For the first time in history, there's a spotlight being shown of history is where it happens. Not that nature is bad, because we know the first paragraph in Genesis says God created the heavens and the earth was good. You know, God never said that about history. The realm of nature is God's invention, God's creation. The realm of history is a human invention. And it probably started when people began to form tribes, families, tribes, get bigger and bigger, and they looked across the water and said, you know, the land over there is more fertile, or there's more deer to hunt over there, so let's go over and take that land. And you had this struggle of people against people, to the point where now we look back and say, this is history. And what the prophet knew so well is that history contains idolatry, and the idolatry is the elevation of power. Whenever you say seek power to the extent that it is inflicted upon another people, the prophet says this is evil itself. It is the misuse of power. And the prophets believed there was no escape from this. There is no utopia. There is no improvement along the path of history that will ever take us away from nations seeking power over other nations. For a Putin to look across to the West and say, I want the empire back. I want Ukraine. And we can see even in that, the coming over, thinking that it would be nothing. I'm the most powerful country in the world, and I'm going to go in and just take these resources. It's going to be over in 72 hours. Months later, we have 100,000 Russian soldiers dead and 100,000 Ukrainian soldiers dead with no end in sight, and it's winter time. And we have empathy for the civilians who are without electricity and heat. And we have empathy for the soldiers on both sides. The Russian soldiers even, who are saying, I never wanted this. I was put in this position by a power that was greedy for resources, for land, for empire, and I have no provision to keep warm during this winter. So the prophet is railing against what power does within history, the idealization of might, of military, of which, yes, we are also guilty of. How many of us have not said the words that America is the greatest power in the world, the greatest country in the world? We have the greatest, best, most equipped military in the world. We're proud of that. We celebrate that. And that's why the prophets would be a little bit annoying to us, because they would come and say, absolutely, the power for human transformation belongs to God. And Isaiah in today's text imagines a time that all the nations shall come to the mountain of the Lord, where instruction is given, because they will be hungry for instruction, because they know that they cannot escape the power gods that we have created. And they will come to learn from God the instructions, the law, the Torah, what we call the Word. And we celebrate as we go toward Christmas, the big day, when we are able to read the text and the Word, the Torah, the instructions from God's own mountain became flesh and entered into our world and entered into our nations and entered into the madness of our power grabs and are seeking to be a God nation and turned everything right side up. There is a story that is very familiar, especially to those who have been raised on Disney. It's a story of an enchantress who comes to a castle and knocks on the door, and the castle door opens, and there is a large man there. He says, "What do you want?" And the enchantress, who is in the form of an elderly woman, poor elderly woman, holds out a rose and says, I need a place to stay for the night. I need to be warm, and I'll give you this rose in exchange for your kindness. And the man said, "Go away. I don't want you. I don't want your rose." And he was selfish, and he was not kind. And in that moment, the old woman became transformed into this beautiful enchantress, holding a glowing rose before her. And he said, "Because you have showed yourself as being selfish and being cruel, you will now be turned into a beast until the time that the last rose petal on this rose falls. And if you cannot in that time period learn to love another person and to have experience the love of another person for you, by the time that rose petal hits the ground, you will be permanently a beast, caught in your beastliness, if that's a word." And so for years and years, the monster, the beast, roamed through his castle, not knowing how he would ever be transformed. All the servants within his castle were transformed into objects: a candlestick, a chest of drawers, a clock. But the servants never gave up hope, because they had heard the prophecy that there's a hope, there's a possibility that all the master has to do is to love and to exhibit kindness and caring and to be loved back, and then we will all be transformed. We're not stuck into this time period of our curse. In the village down below, there was a woman by the name of Belle, and her father had been seeking something and gone the wrong way and knocked on the door of the castle and entered into, because there were wolves about, and the beast caught him and said, "You're trespassing, you should not be here," and put him in prison in his castle. And the daughter went out to seek for her father and to find him there. And she made a deal with the beast, an exchange, her life for her father's, that she would go and be his prisoner forever, willingly, if the beast would let her father go. And the beast said yes. So I'm not going to tell the rest of the story because you know it and you can check it out on Disney, but I want to focus in on those objects that the servants were turned into: the clock and the teapot and the chandelier, the candlestick. They were so filled with hope when they saw Belle walk through the door that this would be the end of the curse, that we would not have to live in this horror, this containment. We could be free again if the prophecy would be. And there is a woman walking through the door. Could it be possible that this is the fulfillment that we have been adventing, waiting for, in hope for the release of our curse? Isaiah knows absolutely that by our own power we cannot create the kind of world that God wishes for us. We cannot fulfill the dream of God. But at the very end, he says this: "Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord." Even though the world continues to be at war, because when there's going to be a day in which those warring nations will take their tanks and their nuclear weapons and their semi-automatic weapons and their rifles and their handguns, and they shall beat them into instruments of healing and cultivating of the earth. This is the vision of hope. We laugh because we go, that's never going to happen. But we rise as a people of God, and we respond to the prophetic call, and he says, yes, I have no power to change the world, but I can walk in that change. I could express kindness. I could do on a micro level. I could be fighting for justice in my own hometown. I could become politically involved when I see the horror of injustice at our borders. I could be a voice, I could write letters, I could be a friend to someone who has nobody to turn to. I, as an individual, we as a church can walk in small steps in the light of the Lord and step into the hope of Advent. For one day we believe that history will be altered by the instruction by the Word made flesh, who dwells among us, the light of the world. This is where we're going on this, our Advent adventure. So I invite you, as the catalog says, to share the Advent. Amen.